All right, everyone. We gave a couple more minutes for those online to hop on and for more individuals to walk in. So I think we're going to get started right now. So first of all, my name is Frasida Davis. I'm the Public Works Administrative Services Manager. We've been working with this company here, which is Chenmore. Um, so basically, we're here today to go over the preliminary landscape master plan. This is your public input meeting. This is actually going to be the second public input meeting for this. There was a phase one where residents came out, you voted, you did your input then. Now we're at the stage where we're ready to finalize the plan, and we want your input again one last time. We've narrowed the voting to various options. So we've narrowed your voting now to a modern and traditional option, right? For all features excluding landscaping. For landscaping, we've narrowed your options to a Florida native option and a more floral option, okay? Florida native is going to be less maintenance, a little low maintenance landscaping. And then the more floral, vibrant colors, of course, it's going to take a lot more water, a lot more pruning, and a lot more work. So we just wanted to kind of give you a pinpoint what you're voting on today. So first of all, I want to say thank you very much for taking your time to come here. I know that most of you either work, and even if you don't work, the fact that you showed up online and that you're here means a lot to us because we put a lot of work into this, and we're putting a lot of work into trying to shape the community and move forward in a unified manner. That is the point of this. So when you do your voting and ultimately it gets voted on, the community now knows, when you go to Weston, you go to other places, you see a resounding theme throughout the community. It's not a mosh posh of different elements. So we're trying to get Cooper City to that exact same place. There was a public desire for that. The commission wants that, the mayor wants that, and the city manager. So we want to get that to you, but it's a process, okay? So I really do thank you guys for coming out here, and I want to express that. So the company that's with us, that's performing this preliminary landscape master plan for us is Chenmore. Chenmore has been diligently working with the commissioners, the mayor, the Green Advisory Board, and other stakeholders. Through initial interviews and collaborative efforts, they have conducted an inventory and analysis of 28 sites, right-of-ways, and intersections. This inclusive engagement process has garnered valuable insight from residents, right? As well as the commissioners and everyone here at the city, right? Looking ahead, as I said, we're looking to have a final master plan presented to the commission in October of this year. Our preliminary goal is to develop and implement a unified landscape master plan that enhances the environment and reflects the distinctive characteristics and branding of the city, someplace special. So along with this plan, you have your branding of someplace special. So we want to make sure that the work that Stacy's actually in the audience, that she's doing with her team in parks on their master plan, that we kind of marry each other. So you do get that same theme, you get that same feel throughout your parks, throughout the entire community. So now I'm going to turn it over to our team here. We're going to do a walkthrough. They're going to present, first of all, slides on everything that I just kind of said, and a little history on what's been going on. And you're going to get the opportunity to kind of walk through. Those of you online, the PowerPoint presentation is available out there, so please follow along as we go. And please cast your vote. After this, we're going to send out surveys to everyone. So please encourage your neighbors to go ahead and respond to those surveys. They're going to receive a constant contact survey. In addition to that, we're going to have ballots throughout our operations. We're going to have ballots here in City Hall. We're going to have ballots in Public Works, you know, the hubs of where all the residents come in and out every day. We're going to have ballots there. We encourage you to vote. It's your city. I know you take pride in it, so please, you know, cast your vote and let your voice be heard. Um, as again, like I said, this is the final phase where you get to put your input. There won't be another phase after this. So thank you again for coming. I'm going to turn it over to Lance from Chenmore, and Lance is going to introduce his team.
Good evening. For the record, Lance Lilly. I'm a senior planner with Chenmore and Associates. I'd like to first thank the team here from the city staff, Mr. Michael Cabello, Ms. Frisetta, and I know that we have other members from the city here as well. I did want to introduce my team. I have Ms. Tiana Morgan here, who is a landscape architect with our team, as well as Sarah Ben Bassett. She's a planner that works with me with this in this process. So as Frisetta eloquently mentioned, the purpose of this is to essentially unite the city in different thematic ways through public spaces. So our presentation today is the landscape master plan. What we're going to go over today is the project scope, the process of how we got here, the public engagement workshop, which was conducted in January, the preliminary master plan, which is this document, and I'll go over what the master plan includes, and then a little bit of a Q&A and the exercise, which you have these boards here. So the project scope is to develop and implement a landscape master plan, which will thematically unite the city's public spaces. So whether that's in the parks, or if that's just right-of-ways or specific sites through the city, we want it to be uniform throughout. And then we're also going to select some type of streetscape or landscape identity for the city, which you'll notice we have some like public art on here, we have public amenities, and then we have the landscape and the signage. And then after that, we're going to develop the actual master plan, have the estimated costs which will be associated to it, and then strategies for implementation. So how did we get here? First, we started off with some information gathering, which was our team doing a little bit of due diligence with the city. And then we did some stakeholder workshops and interviews, which were conducted with city departments, elected officials in the community, as well as any representative boards like the Green Advisory Board. And then in January of this year, January 11th, we had a public engagement workshop, which that workshop was with members in here. We actually had boards along the back wall, and it allowed the community to provide green dots for things that they liked, yellow dots they're a little bit iffy on, and then red dots if they didn't like it at all. And then based on that, which I'll go a little bit in depth further on, a survey was provided, and then we also used that information to create the preliminary master plan. Following that, we created the preliminary master plan and sent it to the city May 17th of this year, which following that, we had a stakeholder workshop with the commission about 2 weeks ago, which we got their feedback. And now we're here today, which is the 25th, for the community stakeholder workshop with everyone in this room as well as virtually. After this meeting is conducted, we're going to have a survey which will be opened up, which Frisetta mentioned, and that'll be approximately for 3 weeks to give members of the community to give us their feedback if they weren't able to attend today. Once we receive all the feedback from all the representatives, we'll come up with the final master plan, which will then potentially be heard by the city commission in October. So as I mentioned, we had a public engagement workshop, which was done in January. These are photos on the right. What were some of the topics that were discussed? We discussed branding. We discussed vision for the next few decades. So not only the residents that are here now, but the foreseeable future. So your kids, grandkids, whoever. And then we talked about favorable elements within the city. So what were some of the things that you liked, whether it be signage or landscape or street amenities? And then what were some things that could potentially be changed within the city? Based on that, we had a survey. The survey was open for about 30 days, and we received 184 survey responses. I'm going to go through some of these slides. These are just the boards that were along the back wall at that presentation, which was showing the existing signage, and it allowed people to go on and put, like, if they liked, let's say, the tombstone entry sign that's in the front, or if they like a particular sign at the community center, then they can put a green dot or a yellow dot or something like that. And then also we had some educational sign, wayfinding, traffic signs. existing structures. Some people they didn't like, for example, the color orange. So they would put a dot that they didn't like the color orange on a particular structure. And then also the existing site furnishing, lighting, and landscaping. And then these were just some examples from whether it be neighboring municipalities or elsewhere of just ideas of what we can use for inspiration for this preliminary master plan. So on the left-hand side, we have the monument signs, which are examples. The right-hand side, we have the educational and wayfinding, site furnishing and public art, lighting and landscaping, and then more monuments. This is a repeat. And then we have the pathways and hardscapes. Through all of this, we created our preliminary master plan, which goes over a few topics. First, it talks about the site inventory and analysis. So as Faceta mentioned that we had 28 sites within the city that we essentially examined. And based on that, we actually had like a ranking system, which I'll go over shortly. And that included right-of-ways, intersections, and sites. And then we also talked about branding options, which would be for monument signs, our signage in general, which would include wayfinding, educational signage, traffic signs, and then also some site and street furnishings, lighting, landscape palettes, hardscape, and public art. And then we also included a public engagement report, which kind of just talked about the favorable elements and what got the highest ratings based on the survey. So here we start with the site inventory. The site inventory, as you see in the middle, has a legend which shows the 28 sites that were chosen. As I mentioned, they were split up between right-of-ways, intersections, and sites. And then we also, when we did the rating system, we did based on opportunities and constraints. So what are some things that could potentially be improved, but also what are some things that can kind of hold you back from doing, whether it be improvements or keeping that going. And then we talked about the rating system, which has a high, mid, and low priority. So if something's high priority, you obviously want to address that immediately. Mid priority is kind of in that middle ground, and then low priority means that it's probably good, just to keep an eye on it. But at the end of the day, it's not as much of a urgency to get that done. So the boards that you have here are separated between modern and traditional. Option 1, which is on this side, we have modern options. Option 2, which is on this side, we have traditional options. And then on the other sides, we have option A, which I'll get over, which is the landscape, as well as on this side, we have the, this is the low maintenance landscape, and that is the ornamental landscape. And I'm just going to show you the differences between the two. So the modern option for signage for monument signs, it includes a stone metal accent with clean finishes. So if you look on the left-hand side, it shows the different materials that are there, which we have like a creek stone, some tile, the different colors such as like stucco, which is like a tan type of stucco, and then the other one that's like a kind of like a dark tan, I guess, or sand, if you want to say. And then also we separated these monument signs based on essentially size. So let's say, for example, you have an area that requires a bigger sign, then the sign to the top left would be one that you could potentially use in that location. And then we have a secondary sign for like a location that might not be as large, but still needs visibility as far as signage. So we have that. And then on the right-hand side to that, we have a smaller sign for maybe a smaller site that doesn't need as big of a sign. And then on the right-hand side of this, we have the wayfinding and educational as well as traffic option, which as you see, we have an educational sign on the side. We have the sign that shows essentially the pointing arrows of where you might need to go. And the stop sign, which it shows just a decorative stop sign using creek stone. And you'll notice that since these are modern options, that some of the materials go throughout. So it has the creek stone and then the same type of stucco and the colors. Then we transition into the site and outdoor furnishing as well as lighting, which we just included like a modern bench, which has the metallic type of colors. We also included like a table. So let's say, for example, there's a location that needs to have a picnic shelter or picnic table, then essentially you'd like to have that material continue throughout. We also showed how that same material can be done with a trash can, and then how we do it with the lighting, which would be more of a modern lighting. To the right of that, we have the hardscape, which shows how the sidewalks can be done. whether you want the sidewalk to be like a meandering sidewalk with a specific type of material and with landscaping on the side. But then also we talked about how the walls and fences can be done. So if you wanted to have the black uh, fence, or if you wanted to have a solid wall, which would be more like that vinyl type of look. Lastly, for the modern option, we talked about the public art, which essentially is just how you would like your public art to be done. So some options for that, for example, if you want to do like the umbrellas above in a particular location, sometimes that's done in like downtowns or specific areas, maybe City Hall or something. Those are options. But then also a lot of municipalities, they put wrappings around their utility boxes just to essentially conceal them in a sense. So maybe you might put a green landscaping around it or some type of colors just to be more decorative. And the same thing with the trash cans. And then in some instances, you might even be able to decorate your intersections or your crosswalks. And then here's where we start transitioning to the other option, which is option 2 for traditional. We have the traditional monument sign, which has the stacked stone with wood accents. And as I mentioned before, we have the top, which would be a bigger entry feature, the bottom left, which is the smaller, which is secondary, and then tertiary, which would be to the right of that. The materials that are used for that, which would be the stacked stone, as I mentioned. Oh, sorry about that. For the online participants, we have a little bit of technical difficulty. Just please bear with us. Okay. All right. We're back. So on the left-hand side, as I mentioned, which is the signage for the monument signs, and that includes the stacked stone, the wood, the natural stone, and then also includes like shiplap and things that you can use for different decorative materials. Then to the right of that, we have the same type of materials, but for the wayfinding, the traffic signs, as well as the educational signs. And as you see, the design of those are different than what we have for the monument, for the modern. And the same thing for the site furnishings, the site and outdoor furnishings and lighting. As you notice, it has a bronze type of feel rather than the metallic silver from the modern. And then we also include the same thing for the lighting, which is on the left-hand side. And then on the right-hand side, we have the more traditional type of look, which includes that brick, which is like the kind of like reddish type of brick, and that can be used whether it be in intersections or if you wanted to do it on a crosswalk. But then also we show how you do it with walls. And if you notice on here, the wall, as far as the brick, is kind of similar to what we had for the previous slide. And this is the same thing. This is just to show how you can do it traditionally with the wrapping of the utility boxes for the receptacles, such as the trash cans, and even decorative like murals. So if you have like a wall that is blank and the city decided that for whatever reason they wanted to add more flavor to it, then essentially you can paint it and make it more of a decorative feature in the city. And then we get into landscaping A, which is more of your Florida native, low maintenance. So we do separate them based on the types of landscaping or vegetation. We have your canopy trees, which would include your live oaks, which I know the city has a lot of different live oaks and oaks in the city, gumbo limbos. And then also we talk about palms. So some areas within the city might be able to utilize palms, whether it's a small intersection or small right of way that could potentially need some type of landscaping. Palms are good to kind of be put in there. And then we also have some small accent trees. We also have some shrubs, which have a tier level of 1, 2, and 3. So large shrubs would be tier 1, mid-level, which would be tier 2, and then we have smaller shrubs, which would be tier 3. And then this is just how they can also be done within the city as far as like the open spaces, the streetscapes, any landscape bufferings, or even along entry features such as monuments. And then we transition into option B. Option B is going to be more of your ornamental color palette or a plant palette, which, as Fracita mentioned, first you have the one that would be more low maintenance. This one would be a little bit more maintenance as far as like trimming and water, but this does add a little bit of vibrant colors. So as you notice, you have your Burford holly, and then you have your portocarpus. You have some of those type of shrubs that are there. And that's also based on a tier system of 1, 2, and 3. And then to the right of that, you have your canopy trees, which some of them actually do carry over between both. So you have like a live oak, which was on the Florida native, but it's also on the ornamental palette. And then also we have some palms that could fit in that category. And then we have some smaller trees and accent trees that can also be used. And this just shows how they're done within the open spaces, as I mentioned, maybe even some residential living, which has, as you see to the bottom left, it shows the vibrant colors for the ground plantings, and then it has the palms above that. In the middle, we have some of the entry features, such as the entry signage and how that can be done with some landscaping. And then this schematic is designed just incorporates some of the options that we put together. So it includes the bench and how the bench could be done with some of the landscaping, how the receptacles would show. And also, if you see for the seating area, it does have a different material on both of them. The one on the right, which is the traditional option, has that more of a brick type of feel. And then the modern option has that like gray type of stone. And then for Pine Island, we did do a schematic for that as well, which shows that you can put some type of trees within those smaller right-of-ways if necessary. And this was just also done for the sports complex, which we just show how you can do it with a modern option with Florida native, but then with a traditional option with the ornamental, which would be more of those vibrant colors. I'm going to pass it over to Sarah, and Sarah is going to actually explain how we're going to do our exercise today.
Thank you, Lance, for explaining how we got here today and the options we are presenting for a vote. So for those of you in person, we are going to hand out to you green dots. So each of you will get 2 green dots because there will be two votes. One would be for your site elements and signage. So either option 1 or 2 being the modern or the traditional. And then your second vote would go for your preferred landscape palette, whether that be option A or B, the Florida-friendly, Florida native versus the ornamental palette. For the virtual participants online, you have this voting board. There will be a poll, and the same goes for you. During this poll, you would choose either option 1 or 2, either the modern for option 1, traditional option 2. And then for our landscaping, you'd be choosing your Florida native or your ornamental landscape palette. Thank you very much.
So we're just gonna give a few minutes for everyone to come up, grab a few stickers, and essentially put them on this voting board that we have right here in the center. We are open to questions as well. So as you guys are going around looking at the boards or have questions, our team is here and available to ask questions. Oh, okay.
One question, one. So we had less than 200 people respond.
Via survey, and then we had people in person that came as well. So total was about 200 people in person as well as on virtual and on the survey.
Disappointing, to be honest, because that's like not even a 0.5% of the population.
So the good thing is it's a valid point that you mentioned. As Fracita mentioned, if you can pass this information along so we can get people to answer the survey, that would be very much appreciated.
So to that point, that was a concern for from the commissioners, from the city manager, from the mayor, the turnout for voting last time. So that's why this time we're trying to beef it up and I started out the presentation by saying, please encourage your neighbors. It's on social media, right? It's advertised out there. We are going to do the 30-day survey. This time, in addition to that going out, we're going to have the ballots here in City Hall. When you go pay your water bill, whatever it is you're doing, whatever transaction, they'll be right there. Also, we're going to have it on that side of City Hall. So, and Public Works, because there's individuals that come into Public Works. Stacy's going to have ballots in the community center, pool and tennis. So we're going all out to try to encourage residents as much as possible to participate in this. And we really want you to. It's going to, whatever happens here, as I said, and I'm trying to impress upon everyone, hopefully there's a good number online, please encourage your neighbors. The voting matters. It's going to shape the landscape of how Cooper City is going to look for generations to come. Okay. So if we vote on modern here today, Cooper City is going to look modern. If we vote on traditional, that's kind of where we're going to go. So whatever we vote on, it's going to progressively start to shape the city that way. Okay, through your monuments, through everything, through your landscaping. Please look at the schematics. We had them do the schematics in addition to the boards that they did last time. So you can actually see a visual of an actual street and an actual park and how that shapes the community, how that look and feel is. So we're trying, but we need your help as well, you know? So. Mhm. Yeah. So,
Yeah, that would come later. I mean, whenever you're actually implementing. When you're actually implementing the design, that will come into play, you know, because these are just kind of a palette. They're not specific for any site in Cooper City.
Yes, is that in the plan?
So to answer that question, I wanted her to add her input. Yeah, so to answer that question, before we do anything with the community, we do have to engage the right people. Okay, so this is giving you a plan. It's just what it sounds like. This is your master plan. So this is the direction the city wants to go in. Then once we decide on the direction we want to go in, then we're going to engage the professional architects. We're going to engage the professional engineers, whomever we need to engage to actually bring that plan together. So it's not going to be city staff going to Home Depot, picking up a, a plant and planting it. So, that's a valid concern, and we will do and execute this the correct way. Right? Yes, sir.
First one, how were they dispersed?
So Michael can elaborate a little bit better because I wasn't here at the time. I'm sorry. But he's our communications person, so he can kind of go into the details of how they went about that. I'm sorry. Okay, so Michael's our communications person. I'm going to turn that over to him. He can elaborate a little bit more on how he's going to execute getting the information out there to you guys. So Michael, take it away.
So thank you for the question. So the first survey was sent out via an e-newsletter that is sent out each week to all those emails that are linked to utility accounts in the city. So to answer the question, it was sent via email. This survey is going to be sent both electronically through this e-newsletter sent out each week. There's also a Cooper Quarterly newsletter that is going to be going to mailboxes of residents all across the city within the next couple weeks. There will be a QR code. That's something you would scan with your phone, but there also will be a URL that you will be able to link to online. So we're trying to make sure we hit every resident, both on electronically in your mailbox. And then, as was mentioned at the very top of the meeting, We're going to be putting survey, pretty much like a ballot, at each of our facilities around the city. So those who come in also have another opportunity to see it at that point. Obviously, we're trying to drive to more than 200 responses overall after this meeting.
Include this upcoming ballot in the utility bill. Everybody gets the utility bill, they look at it. Not everybody looks at the quarterly, not everybody possibly does open up their email
Yep.
and read detail. Because I came here and I had no idea what this meeting was about. I thought it was landscaping, just bushes and trees and what have you. I had no concept of how involved this plan was.
Valid point. We'll make sure to include that within the billing message and inside of each utility bill. Yep.
Additional questions before we
Yeah.
start the exercise?
There are questions coming in online, so we can, I'll ask them and I'll step aside here.
Yeah.
So one question is from Debbie. Are you going to replace the areas that the bushes are not growing along Sterling Road?
So that's our question. So right now, in addition to this master plan, Public Works is actually, how do I respond to this the best way? So we have engaged staff with an exercise of going out into the community and looking at the various areas where we have shrubs, plants, trees, et cetera, and starting to take an inventory, remove dead ones, they're dead, they're dead. We're starting to take an inventory and trying to work towards replanting trees where needed, and shrubs. So the long and short answer of that is we're working towards moving through the community and trying to document the inventory of the issues that we're seeing so we can best address the issues that are out there. So hopefully that answers that.
Another question coming in online, and it has to do with lighting. Byron wrote, cities are opting to LED conversions and retrofitting. What research cut sheets are available for the lighting specifications? We don't want the dreaded LED lights turning blue in our city.
Okay. So I really honestly, so I'm gonna take a stab at this. I'm not a professional in lighting, okay? But what I've seen in other places, when they have those blue LED lights, I think they distinctly select that type of look, because there are LED lights that are completely not blue. So we're not, to my knowledge, opting for a blue LED light. Um, and that would come later in design, but based on what I see throughout the city, we have changed out some lights from the older type of lights to LED lights, and nothing's blue here. So I don't think the city is moving towards that, but I can't speak to that. That comes to the higher ups. But I think maybe you can kind of touch on that. Mm-hmm. Oh, can you do mind talking so you can, okay, he's saving me, okay? So, thank you.
Captain Christopher DiGiovanni, I'm your district chief here, also in charge of code enforcement, hence my interest in the meeting. That's a great question. About a year and a half ago, there was a presentation given to the mayor and commission on the FPL lighting preference of the shade. And you'll be happy to know, at least to the one that asked that question, they did not select the blue lighting.
Thank you. All right.
An additional question coming in online, would any of the lighting be solar powered?
I mean, when you have the modern and you have the different lighting options, again, it depends on where the city wants to go with the design, okay? So at this phase, we're really just looking at what we're looking at. You're looking at the plan. And then when you're looking at executing the plan, then you're going to look at the cost effectiveness of the various options within that plan. We're not at that place yet. When we get to that place, we do, like I said, have to engage certain professionals. They're going to make their recommendations, and then it's going to be budgetary decisions with the commission, right? So I cannot answer that distinctly right now. But I can say that I'm sure they'll examine the various options at the time, because anything we do, we kind of look across the board. We throw a wide net, and then we have to hone it in based on budget, okay?
Oh, I'd like to ask about budget. What has gone on with, I mean, what is the budget and who's working on that and timing?
Okay, so as Lance touched on, the budget portion of that, when you get the final landscape master plan, that's when the price of what's being proposed is put into place. So they're gonna be able to see, you know, if you go with, for example, if you go with the more metallic, silver, modern bench, this is your range of price, right? And, you know, like we said, this is going to go back to commission for them to make an ultimate decision on where they want to go with this. So there isn't an actual budget established right now. They're working on all the numbers, all the figures, and they're going to present that to commission, and then the ultimate decision will be made there.
Duh.
No, no. Again, it's a, depending on what it is, when you have design, right? If you have a modern design, and let's say that bench costs, I'm just gonna make up a number that sounds wild. Let's say that bench costs $10,000 for the one metallic bench, right? But you love that bench. If you examine anything about design or have any kind of knowledge about it, that same type of look, that same type of feel, you could get it at a lower cost by changing the materials, you know, by changing where it's sourced from, things like that. So you'll get the same aesthetics, but you're just going to get it at a lower cost. So it's not that commission's going to say, no, we're not doing anything. It's just what will budget, what, you know, what will fit the look that we're going for at the price that we can afford, if that makes sense. Did I answer? No? No? Yeah, unfortunately, ma'am, I can't present a budget to you because that's the final phase of this project. I wish I could, and he could speak to it, but I really can't. I'm sorry.
Just to elaborate a little bit further, it's a little bit difficult to say what the budget would be for one particular element, because at this point, what we're trying to do is we're giving you a menu, and we want you to pick what on the menu you like. After you pick what's on the menu, then we can come back to you and say, based on the community's input, these are the various options of what might cost. As Rosita mentioned, there might be a bench that the community likes. Okay, these are the various options that it will cost for that bench. Same thing with lighting, same thing with landscaping. Because, for example, if you pick a specific right of way that needs to be updated, that might require 10 trees, and the community might want it to be a particular type of tree. Well, based on now and based on 10 years from now, who knows when they're going to actually implement said project. So costs go up, as you know, inflation, things like that. So it's difficult to say today, this is the particular cost when we don't know what the city really wants as of yet. If that answers your question at all. No?
No.
You mentioned 10 years, is that the life line, timeline for the master plan?
Not necessarily. It's just for,
The mic.
oh, not necessarily. It's just for generations to come. And this just gives the city more teeth to say, all right, this is what we spent our time and resources on to come up with this particular landscape master plan. We have this to go forward for decades to come. Doesn't have to be 10 years, doesn't have to be 20 years. I mean, it's just a guide. Every master plan is different, depends on what, like, there's park, there's no, we just did for this one, what we mentioned before was on the January meeting, we asked what you would like to see within the next 10, 20, and 30 years. Yes, sir. Mhm.
So
Oh. The question that was asked was, when we did our survey in the process, what did we find more of? Did we find more traditional options or more modern options? I think it's predominantly about landscaping, I think you mentioned.
Florida, they do.
Here, right here.
Sorry.
Okay, my answer.
That's instead of him trying to-
Oh.
Oh,
So
you're gonna repeat.
to answer, let me know if I answer your question, but you're asking what we got in regard to the survey. The survey was not exactly taking an inventory of what we have now in the city. The survey was seeing the direction in which the community wanted to go, and that's how we came to the more narrowed schematics we have here today. So we had inspirational choices, and based on the votes that were casted, the highest votes came down to elements that ended up being mostly traditional and mostly modern. So it became that we were looking at what was voted on as inspiration and which direction that the community wants to go, not exactly an inventory of what's here now.
But also, when we did our site inventory and what, a lot of the landscaping that's here now seems more of the Florida native, is what it seems. Because as I mentioned, you have a lot of which some of those trees kind of go into both palettes, if that makes sense, because we have the gumbo, correct.
Oh, okay.
Go modern. 70%, 60% of the city is tradition. Not gonna- You're not gonna get what you want.
Well, and
You're not gonna have modern. 60% existing.
And to continue with that, but it's not only just now, as you mentioned. So let's say some trees, they last decades, 100 years. So it's also to examine some of those areas that need trees, like the Palm Island that we showed. And then also if, let's say, for example, a tree is removed, what would be the next tree to replace that tree in that location? So for example, I know that a lot of people mention that oaks, usually they rip up sidewalks and things like that. If you don't want oaks, what's an alternative to another canopy tree? Which we gave the palette to that. So there are some ornamental canopy trees, which as I mentioned, they kind of fit in both umbrellas, but if you don't want to use oaks, then they're all alternatives. So that's why I mentioned this is more of a menu of when you go over to these boards, or even when you see it online, what would you like to see in the city? Don't just think about today, think about the next few years as well. Yes.
And kind of explain more what a master plan is, right? You're doing a master plan to kind of inventory what you currently have, and you're gonna take a look at 10, 15, 20 years in the future. What is the look, feel, and the aesthetics that Cooper City wants to achieve in the future? So that's why you're doing a master plan. It's kind of hard to tell the cost of things, because in reality is you're picking an aesthetic. What does Cooper City want to be for the next generation to come? And they'll provide some costs towards the end, a guideline of it.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I don't know if I need a mic, but my concern and question, I guess, is on the landscape palette.
Okay.
The native plants for the plants that last 30, 50, 100 years. That's definitely the way I think we should go. And then the understories, that's where you can put in some color, some plants that are only good for like 5 years, 10 years. And so maybe some traditional, some landscape A, and then some landscape B for the smaller plants.
Which, if that's the case, then the ornamental palette would be what you would prefer, because as I mentioned, some of the canopies go into both, I guess umbrellas, you should say. For example, oaks go into both. So if you like the oaks, then you keep the oaks, but then if you like, let's say, tier 2 of the shrubs, which is more of the ornamental, tier 2 of the shrubs, and you like the color, then you can say that's more of an ornamental. But there are shrubs and lower ground covering that are low maintenance, which would be more Florida native, and those could last just as long, and they're more drought tolerant. So, I mean, it's really up to the community what they'd like to see, but we do have both options on here, and that does include a little bit of both. It's just more maintenance, more water, more.
So the big money on the pallet's gonna go to the big trees, so I guess I'm gonna vote for.
Don't tell me your vote. I want you to get up and put a sticker.
Here, I'm gonna vote for the big money on the canopy.
Surprises.
I want to put a sticker. We have more questions online.
Yes, we do. There's a question, it's directed towards a landscape architect. Can we find an even middle between Florida native and non-native? Based on my experience with capital projects, native landscaping seems dull, colorless due to the limited options.
Yeah, so I mean, we can provide that. I mean, the options were mostly just to see, would you like to see some color or would you like to just, have your low maintenance native landscape? Um, I don't know if that answered the question.
As well, just piggybacking off of what Lance was saying earlier, I would say if the community wanted to see some color in general, choosing the ornamental would probably be what you're looking for, because he was mentioning that the canopy trees do overlap between being Florida native as well as you have some of the accent trees, which would be with color. So if you're looking for a blend, the ornamental might be more what you're looking for, as well as another point, they're not all being replaced at the same time. You're not going to have all the trees replaced at the same time. It's as needed over time. Where does a tree need to be replaced? Where do we need to add some trees? So you'll still have your existing natives or existing accents, and then you're adding in additional, and this would be, again, at construction stage, what is appropriate in this exact area? What do we need to put here? And what size does it need to be appropriate for that particular site and location?
We got another question. It's regarding trees. Is Cooper City going to replace destructive and unsightly black olive trees in our swales and next to our sidewalks?
Look, as I slowly approached voting. Okay. So in terms of the existing trees, like she said, I'll just answer it politically and say that we will replace trees as needed based on what is decided here and what is voted upon by commission moving forward. So that's the way I'm going to answer that question. It's a good question, but I don't think that any of our residents, as much as, one thing for me for Cooper City, and granted, unfortunately, I don't live here, but I love where I live. One thing for Cooper City that I find to be so wonderful is it's beautiful. I love trees. I love seeing trees all over the place. So by no means do I think the city would want to go around and just ripping out all of our trees. So this plan is presented, like they said, looking forward between now, the next 30 years, what do you want the city to evolve to? So if we do have to take out one of those trees, what do you want to see there? So, again, I know it's a little redundant. Do vote on what your opinion is, what you want to see happen. No, we're not going to go through and bulldoze all the trees in Cooper City, but we do want your opinion on what you want to see. So please, put your input.
Another question more directed towards the city, I believe. Some options being shown are going to require maintenance. Who will be doing the maintenance?
Well, that's, again, the different options as a city on a whole, right? When we have the Florida native option, we do have a landscape company that does some of the work. Then some of the other work has to be done by staff. So when that question came up about, dead trees or shrubs, or I can't remember the distinct question at this point, staff has to go around and do that inventory and get us to a place where we say, okay, we need to replace X amount of trees on X block and, that type of thing. So it's a combination of, staff, potentially outside contractors, depending on what's going on. And that'd be the way.
Proceed. Another question, this is more for the city. Is the city going to hire an arborist?
So, I don't know if, okay, so I'm gonna say I cannot answer that question right now. There's different plans in the work, for the city in terms of public works and how public works is moving forward. And how we're gonna, better manage things that happen throughout the city. We're collaborating with parks and trying to make sure that we have a cohesive approach to everything. I can't take a position and tell you a position right now because it's not finalized as to what that structure is. But in upcoming commission meetings, you will get an answer in there somewhere as to what's happening with public works on a whole and the city on a whole. All right, so coming soon, you'll get a little bit more information, but I don't, really want to say exactly yes or no to whether we're having an arborist, right? Well, yeah, so one thing I can say, all right, so this part I can say for sure, I'm pretty sure I'm safe saying this. We, there were approved staff within Public Works, where we're ramping up the efforts for the tree trimming. We're gonna have a larger tree trimming crew and start working towards the goals that you guys want to see happen. So that I can say, okay? Yeah, yes, sir, sorry. Mm-hmm. 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 So, in terms of the different communities throughout the city, the HOAs, so the question was, is the city going to require the HOAs to follow the master plan? And I guess the best way to present that is that this is a plan that for new developments, definitely this information will be pushed towards new developments. The existing communities, private property, there's things we can and cannot do, right? It's their property. So if, and we get calls like these, if there's things happening on private property, we can contact the HOAs. we can have conversations with them, sit down with them and try to get them to resolve the issues. There's code and the chief could probably speak better to this, with different measures that we can take, but, I don't know, and I might have to get back to the community with that answer as to whether or not we can enforce the master plan on existing communities. I don't know that. The planning person is not here for Cooper City. Chief, do you happen to know that part of it? His question was for HOAs, are we gonna start enforcing this on them? The existing, we can, yeah.
Yeah, these are all wonderful questions. I applaud you guys for being so thorough with your thinking. This plan that's coming before you for the master plan is looking primarily at the city public spaces and thoroughfares. So that would not include HOAs as far as imposing on them to follow the same type of plan. Now, HOAs are certainly encouraged that if they wanted to unify their beautification appeal and look to match the city's plan, that'd certainly be within their rights to do. As far as the CDD comment that you had made referring to Pine Island, I could talk to you about that on the side. That would be separate, and we have to work with the county on that item.
Thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to know where the funding is coming from to do this project, not the budget, the funding.
Again, I have to defer, the commission, when commission meets, I'll pose that question to the city manager so he can address that when they vote on this. I don't honestly know the answer to that. I'm not the finance person. I'm in public works and that's my arena. So I don't know exactly where they're taking funds from or where they're gonna derive with the funds. So I will let the city manager know that's a concern and if he could possibly address that. Okay, thank you. Okay, are there any other questions?
Not a question for Sita, but there was a comment online asking whether within code enforcement, there is an arborist. Checked with the captain. At this point, there is not an arborist within code enforcement. So I just wanted to make sure for the folks online that we address that question.
Any additional questions?
Okay,
not-
so let's get to the boards. Again, look at all the boards, ask, questions related to what you're voting on tonight, and we'll be happy to answer you. Those of you online, please cast your vote. And again, please, please, please encourage your neighbors. If it's someone that's not tech savvy, have them come into the office and do the ballots, right? If they're tech savvy, like he said, you're gonna have online, you're gonna have your URL stuff that you can scan with your phone. You're gonna have so many different options of how you can go ahead and cast your vote. So please spread the word to your neighbors. And we want to see what they think and feel about this, okay? Yes, sir. Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
I'll answer that question.
Oh, go ahead.
Is she a resident of Cooper City? Okay, that's as long
So-
as they're a resident of Cooper City.
So yeah, so as long as the person's a resident of Cooper City, they can vote. So your neighbors, please spread the word. And again, we really thank you guys for coming out. We're thankful for all the questions. Oh, there's one more online
There was-
before you guys get up. Sorry.
There was one more online. It's broad, but somebody was asking, is there a way to plant more trees along the main roadways? Obviously, I believe this is part of what this project's about.
Yeah, so I think Michael just answered the question that was just posed online. Is there a way to plant more trees along the roadways? Depending on space, depending on type of trees, and depending on budget, I would say absolutely, right? So it depends on what you vote on, what the space is. If there's not enough space for a tree in that immediate portion, then you can't put a tree there. It might need to be a shrub. So I'm again not a landscape architect, so I'm gonna stay away from that realm, but the whole point of the plan is to overall beautify the city in a more cohesive manner over time, right?
And
Alex, you
also,
wanna-
when you think about landscaping, you just want to make sure that the landscaping, it's visible. So there's not a safety hazard. So you don't want to have too many trees or things like that. So when you're pulling out of a right of way or intersection, you can't see as far as visibility. So that does come into play when you come into thinking about specific types of trees or vegetation. No more? All right, so what we're gonna do is Sarah actually just walked around for the in-person participants and provided green dots. We're going to allow you guys a little bit more time to walk around. We're gonna be available for any questions that you have. But then when you get the opportunity just to vote on this board, provide your sticky, which will be whether you want modern or traditional. And then at the bottom, whether or not you want option A for landscaping, which is your Florida native, or if you want option B, which is your ornamental, which would be essentially the more colorful option.
Right in the center.
And then online participants, Mr. Cabello is going to provide you a poll, which will give you the opportunity to do the same thing that the in-person participants are doing without the ability to put these nice cool dots on the board. But other than that, we are going to start our exercise. If there's any questions, we'll be available. Well, thank you everyone for voting. We're going to conclude this presentation just by saying the next steps, which I know some people might have logged off or exited. Today was the phase 2 public engagement meeting, which was conducted on July the 25th. As we mentioned earlier, we're going to have about 30 days, give or take, of the survey, which will be open until August the 15th. At the conclusion of the survey, we're going to come up with the final master plan, which will discuss funding and budgeting for this master plan. And then we're going to come back to this commission in October. And that is the end of our presentation. Thank you everyone for joining us in person as well as online. Please feel free to do the survey once it is provided to you. Send it to your neighbor, whoever that's next door to you. I don't know. Just give them any information that you can to get the word out. Thank you.